So Mauro, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. But before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
I come from a small town outside of Milan called Varese, so in Italy. And my life has been always in suspension, if you want, between the bucolic town close to the lakes and the mountains, and then the fascination of the city of Milan, of all the trends and the people that you could meet in that city. That's my background.
And tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I wanted to be, as many kids in Italy, a soccer player. But then very soon, still, when I was very, very young, as a young teenager, I think I had two dreams. One was the one of becoming an artist, a painter in particular. And then the other one was the one of writing. I wanted to write books. I was fascinated by the world of philosophy and literature. So I wanted to become one of those. In both situations, artist or writer, I was probably fascinated by the creativity of those two professions that you manifest in very different ways then.
And Mauro, can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
Well, probably, when somebody asks me what inspires me, even today, my answer starts always in the same way. It comes from within. I think inspiration literally comes from within, and is somehow eventually activated by something that happens around you. Back then, when I was very young, probably my biggest inspiration came from the philosophers, the writers, the artists that I was studying at school. It was fascinating for me to see how hundreds of years after they died, in some cases thousands of years after they died, we were still talking about them, about their vision of the world, their experiences, their theories. Essentially, they left something behind them. They made them immortal. And so I think every human being has this instinct of fighting death and becoming immortal in a way or the other. Some have this instinct developed more than others. Today, I realize that, my fascination with those kind of people and the idea that, of creating something that become a legacy, that survive you, that lives after you're not there anymore, is what drove me all these years. So my first inspirators were these stars of culture from the past.
Yeah. And now, Mauro, you're having an illustrious career. You won hundreds, I believe, 1,000 design and innovation awards. And you were even knighted by the president of Italy. Looking back over your career, what would you say was a major turning point, or maybe number of turning points?
Well, you're right. There were a number. There were a few. I think there are two that I always remember because they happen early on. But then again, there are others that happen later. I'll mention those two that are really meaningful to me. The first one is the meeting when I was just 19 with the head of design of Philips Design. His name is Stefano Marzano, Italian, working in Philips, the consumer electronics company in Eindhoven in Holland. And I back then I just started to study design, and I told a friend of mine from high school that I was studying design and I was fascinated by a variety of different design leaders and this and that. We're having just a normal conversation. At a certain point, she told me, well, I know, a famous designer. His name is Stefano Marzano. I was like, oh my God, you know Stefano. I would love to meet him. He's such an inspiration. And he was for all of us studying industrial design back then in the 90s in Europe, especially. And so few weeks later, Stefano comes to Varese, Stefano comes to my town, and this friend of mine, Valentina, calls me, and she's like, oh, Stefano is here and he's at her house for lunch. You want to come for a coffee to meet him? And I remember, the moment like if it was yesterday. And it's a very important moment for me. I was in a bus. I was going home. It was lunchtime. And my day was full of commitments. I needed to go training for soccer and doing other things, and commitments that I couldn't really leave. Back then I was playing semi-professional in soccer. You don't skip a training. So yeah. I have all these things, and I'm like, inside me, like, many people probably would have said, well, I can't. Instead, I decided to just drop everything and go. I follow my instinct and I went. It was like a sliding door moment. I went and I met Stefano. I got fascinated by Stefano. And after that, I started to write to Stefano letters like the philosophers would do. Again, fascinated by the world of philosophy. And obviously, Stefano wouldn't answer. I wrote probably, 2-3 letters in a couple of years. But Stefano did something that is magic, that is very important, that really, once again, changed my life. At a certain point, after a couple of years, he take 2 books that he published with Philips. He had them in Italian and in English. He decides to send to me just the ones in English. Back then, I didn't speak a word of English. And the first time I met him, he asked me, do you speak English? And I'm like, no, I studied French at school. I didn't study English. And you look, I was 22. By the time he sent me the book, I was 21, 22. All my friends learned English when they were 10. So I was like 11, 12 years late. I was thinking, I'm not going to learn English at this time. I need to study design. I'm at university. Then I need to find a job. I'm not going to learn English at the level, of other people right now. And so Stefano told me, well, if you don't, you will never really, have the possibility to have a career in companies like Philips, for instance. But again, nothing happened after the meeting. But then he sent me these books, and in these books he writes, I'm sending them in English to you because you really need to practice your English and learn English. That was the final push, if you want, for me to really decide to go abroad to learn English. Back then, I won already a scholarship to go to Paris to study design in Paris for 1 year. I decided to give up the scholarship, wait 1 year more, apply for an English-speaking country. And when I'm 23, finally, I end up in Ireland to study design at the National College of Art and Design for 1 year with an exchange program. And it was difficult because I had to do the design exams in a language that I didn't know at university level. So imagine how complex it was. But I did it anyway. And today I'm here speaking English to you and leading design in American corporations. And I think few things happened that are really important to keep in mind, that for me became very important learnings. First of all, I got out of my comfort zone. I did it that day in the bus. The reality is that, for a kid like me, go to meet this superstar of the design world in the house, of this friend with the parents of the friend. It was difficult. I was out of my comfort zone. It was not comfortable, but I did it anyway. When I decided to go study English in Dublin, I did it even if it was insanely difficult to do it while you're doing in university. You need to do your exams in the language. I didn't have the money to do it when I was in Dublin. I had to work, but not just in a bar or because I didn't know the language. I had to go to work in the cafeteria, washing dishes, and I remember the laughters of my peers, of the other students. They will see Mauro, the cool guy, in certain situations, and then they will find him in the cafeteria washing dishes. And for me, it was perfectly fine. I was actually proud of, making the money to sustain myself in the situation. But again, the overall situation was out of my comfort zone. And I did it anyway. And it's been so important. Then Stefano also did something very important. And this is, I think, a learning and something to keep in mind for any successful person, for any leader. Stefano was a busy leader. But he decided to take the time to take these books, package them, write something on the books, and send them to Italy, to another country, to a kid that literally didn't know. He met once 2 years before. No interest. I didn't have any kind of connection. I couldn't help him in any form of way. It was a pure act of kindness to give him back to somebody. Why this kid? Probably because this kid showed to Stefano enthusiasm, interest, that he was inspired, resilience, motivation. And so this is an advice then to the kids of the world: show that power, that passion, show that resilience, show that inspiration, and connect with the mentors of the world. And then for the mentors of the world, make sure you give back and you give time to this individual. There is a second one, but I don't know if I'm going too long. You tell me if I'm going too long.
No. This is very, very, very instructive. And in fact, it's very inspiring. So is it fair to say, Mauro, that this episode really inspired your design career?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it was a sliding door. It was a turning point because it gave me the possibility to learn English, so to get the tool that became necessary for my career. Then after that, many other things happened. You know, I joined actually after I did my thesis with Philips Design on wearable technologies and the vision of the future, how technology meets society and people. And then I started my career in Philips Design. And so that approach, very visionary, very innovation driven to design, has been for sure an inspiration for me, and it's been forming my way of looking at design in the world of business and in society. But then I met, while I was in Philips, another person that became very important for me. His name is Claudio Cecchetto, and he was a very famous, as a celebrity in Italy. He was a celebrity in Italy, a famous show business producer, DJ, the founder of the most important Italian radio DJ. And he discovered so many unbelievable talents in the music world, in television, and so on and so forth. And he was producing them. So a big star that I would usually watch in television from home. A friend of mine was the assistant of Claudio in that moment, and she combined, she put together a meeting for me and this friend and a couple of other friends with Claudio. You know, again, I was 24 back then, and we will go. You know, we could have gone to this celebrity to just have a drink with a celebrity, get an autograph back then. Today, you may get a selfie eventually, and that's all. In reality, instead, we decided to go there thinking about what can we do with this person? What can we create with this person? So back then, Claudio was investing in the world of digital, internet. He was really, you know, trying to figure out a world. He was full on 24/7 on that. And we decided to go there and propose him to use 3D technologies that we master as young designers, just fresh of university. So this 3D technology in internet, in the digital world. Claudio got really excited by our proposal. He asked us, well, what do you do? And we bluffed. You know, I was still in Philips. My friends were doing different things. We told him, well, we may want to do a studio together, to create a studio together. And Claudio was like, you know what? Do it with me. And so a month later, we created a company with him, and he was like just unbelievable, you know, for these kids. And we started to work with all these celebrities on their digital content and their image and everything. We were really happy. But here comes, you know, the key learning. You know, I remember Claudio from the very beginning telling us, well, this is great, you know, you're doing all these things, and I'm sure you're happy, you know, with these celebrities and this great work. But the reality is that I really don't care at all about this kind of work. What we need to do is to do something that nobody ever did before. Essentially, was talking about innovation, but he never used the word. The guy was a music person. He was, you know, he was a DJ inside. So he wouldn't talk, you know, as eloquently as we talk in corporations, in the business world. He wouldn't talk about innovation, but he was embodying innovation. He was innovation. That's who he was. And his vision is, you know, and not even the vision, the way of working and thinking and behaving was very simple. Every time For every task, anything you do, you need to do something that nobody ever did before, that not even you did before. It could be a simple project. It could be something big, thinking about something completely different every single time. Back then, we started to work on the world of Bitcoin, for instance, and we talk about late 90s, early 2000. Nobody was talking about Bitcoins, so digital currencies, and a variety of other things. So from then, I brought this with me. Innovation, innovation, innovation every single day. It doesn't require more effort. It's just a way of thinking. And if you apply the way of thinking, then magic things can happen.
Now, Mauro, today you are a global leader in design, and you are launching a book soon about design. Can you tell us a little bit more about your thinking, how it has evolved, and what you are going to share in the book?
Well, look, we just talked about innovation and about that specific moment in time in my life. That's what has been driving me all the time. I am obsessed, literally obsessed with doing something that nobody ever did before. Now, applied to my world, that means, there are different dimensions of this innovation. First of all, obviously, is the innovation in the company I work for, in PepsiCo, and is innovation applied to the products that we design, the brands that we design, both the existing ones. So innovation, for instance, in the way we communicate them, in the way we build experiences, and then in the new ones, innovation in redefining, reimagining the portfolio, the products of the future, the snacks and beverages of the future. Then there is another dimension, is innovation in the way we build the capability. Design didn't exist as a function in PepsiCo before I joined. I was called by PepsiCo, by the CEO back then, Indra Nooyi, 8 years ago, to build the design capability in the company. And building a capability is extremely complex. It's a design project by itself. You need to create the different functions within the capability. You need to build integration within the company. You need to attract the best talents out there, and therefore you need to communicate, outside of the company, not just within the company, and inspire the people out there to join the organization. And that's why, for instance, we started to publish books about what we do. I created this podcast called In Your Shoes, where we really position PepsiCo as a thought leader in the world of innovation, of creativity in general, through conversations that have nothing to do with PepsiCo, but are sponsored and enabled by PepsiCo, by corporation. And that's the real innovation, the real, breakthrough in these kind of conversations. And those are just some of the multiple levers I'm leveraging to build the capability. You mentioned the book. I'm writing this book both because it's been, as I told you earlier, my dream since I was a kid. I always wanted to write, a book. It was my passion. I love writing. And somehow probably, that idea of a legacy, of becoming immortal through something that you write and will last after you're gone. It may last, for few people. For me, it's enough that it lasts for my future kids that I don't have yet, for the next generation, my nephews, my family, my friends, and anybody interested on the topic I want to share. The book is about people. It's about people in love with people. That is my definition of designers. Essentially, it's a book on design and innovation that doesn't focus, as many other books do, on either examples and best practices of projects or tools and processes to drive innovation and design, but focus instead on people, on the human beings in 3 dimensions. The people designing and innovating. So what are the key traits, the key characteristics of these individuals, how they think, how they behave, how they interact with others. And this is so insanely important, because you can have the best tools, the best frameworks inside your company, big or small, whatever it is. But if you don't have the right people to use those tools, to interpret those frameworks, you will fail anyway. And too many times we spend time to talk about the tools, and we forget to talk about the people. A tool is like a brush. Put that brush in the hands of Picasso, or put that brush in the hands of, anybody on the street, probably the results will be very different. And so the same applies to innovation, brand building, creativity, design. You know, you can have the best tools and processes in the planet in your big corporation, but if you don't have the right people with certain kind of characteristics, you will fail. So that's people in the first dimension. The second dimension is the people we design for. Too many companies drive innovation and design through technology, or through branding, or through, they drive growth and business growth through scale and distribution and customer relationships. And the reality is that we live in a world today where we need to desperately and obsessively refocus everything on the human being, the person we design for. We cannot protect the mediocrity of anything through barrier to entry, through scale, through IP and technology. We live in a world where anybody can come up with an idea, get access to funding through the proliferation of VC funding, hunting for ideas, or through sites like Kickstarter.com, for instance. So getting money is easier than in the past. The cost of manufacturing is going down, driven by new technologies and globalization. You can go straight to your users and consumers through e-commerce, so you can sell to them through the digital platforms, and you can build your ecosystem of communication through social media. So anybody today, anybody listening to us right now could come up with an idea and go against the big corporations, the big brands. There is no barrier to entry anymore. So either the big companies and the small ones, the startups of the world, focus on people, on what they need and what they want, on their current frustrations with existing solutions and offerings that are in the market, finding solutions that are relevant for them holistically: product, communication, service, distribution, experience in retail, anything from any standpoint. Either you do something like this, either you create excellence for people, or somebody else will do it on your behalf. Every company needs to re-put the human being at the center. And so that's the second pillar. The first one was the people designing and innovating. The second one is the people we design and innovate for. And the third one, and I will be short, is the people surrounding the designers and innovators. You can have the best ideas of the world. You can be focused on people. You can have all the right characteristics, the leadership traits, that are necessary to succeed. But then you are surrounded by other people. Is your boss, is your sponsor, is what I call the co-conspirators, people working with you, but it's also the people against you, the people that are creating roadblocks in your way. So the book talks also about how to manage all of these people and the complexity that they represent, how to leverage the mentors, the sponsors, the co-conspirators, the leaders that surround you, and how to deal with the ones that eventually are fighting against you and are slowing you down in a variety of different ways.
So Mauro, is it fair to say it has a lot to do with leadership and innovation? Okay, so let's talk about leadership. What does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, I think is more important than ever, because we live in a society that is, as I said earlier, hyper accelerated, global, where the digital platforms are building a new need for transparency and authenticity on one side, and also for, once again, efficiency, extreme efficiency and agility on the other. So while in the past you could have big processes at scale that will drive and run organizations, brands, and companies, and obviously you always need a leadership also in the past and in the present, but today those processes and tools are not enough. You need to move faster, you need to be agile, you need to really understand how to be as efficient as possible, but combining that with the best possible quality, because if you don't do it, again, there is no barrier to protect you anymore. There is a new level of competition out there. And so leadership is more necessary than ever, because you need leadership and leaders to drive this complex situation in this complex scenario. What do you need in all of this? Well, I think some keywords are empathy. I think you need leaders that have a very high EQ and empathy and understanding people surrounding them, situations surrounding them, and then the people they design for. They need to understand that with their guts and their stomach, even before with their mind. And then within a company, empathy is key, combined with charisma and ability to inspire, because you need to bring people with you and you need to make them work together in a very efficient way, overlapping each other in terms of responsibilities, working in hands in hands. And too many leadership styles in the past instead focus on conflict, on putting people against each other to extract the best out of them. I really seriously think that the kind of leadership style was possible exclusively when there was a lot of fats. There was a lot of, possibility to be inefficient because of your scale, because of your barrier to entry. But today, when you need efficiency, conflict is inefficient by definition. Having people doing the same thing one against the other is not efficient. It's all about today is all about collaboration. It's all about connection. It's all about integration. And therefore, it's all about leaders with empathy, EQ, and leaders that are kind and that are good inside and know how to inspire and bring people with them. I think out of many other characteristics that are really important, these are, the key one to drive the change.
So Mauro, looking into the future, what would you say should be the environment? How can we design an environment that will empower future leaders and help us build future leaders?
Well, I think we need cultures of, first of all, you already used the word of empowerment. So you need to be comfortable with your leaders in your organization, and you need to give them space. You need to enable them. You need to empower them. Then you also need to have the courage of correcting them when they make mistakes, when they fail, without crucifying them, without making sure that you don't penalize them if they make those mistakes and those experiments, and if they fail, but making sure also that you are there to help them understanding what they're doing. And if they did a mistake, if they're not aware of it, you need to have the courage, because it requires also courage as a leader to help these people understanding when they're doing something that is not okay and redirect them. So on one side, the first one, empowerment and delegation, is really about giving them freedom and space. And I mean, it's really, in my case, it's really part of who I am. But then again, you need to intervene in the right moment and help them, redirect if they're not going in the right direction. You need to do it also by inspiring them. It's so important to have a dream, to have a vision, and to share it within the organization, and eventually to share it also outside the organization, because the people within the organization, they also read articles and books, and they listen to podcasts, and they watch television or whatever it is. So if you are there reiterating the mission, the vision, the dream, that will bounce back inside the company as well. And so this idea of inspiring, of having a dream is key because on one side, it's key for you when you build a team made of leaders and people that want to change the world. And the other side is key because by osmosis, you will show them what to be a leader means, and they will become leader, themselves, and they will build their own form of that vision, that dream within, your company, or eventually even in the future when they will move out of the company, they will bring with them that idea of thinking big and dreaming big. And then another component I think that is really important is to create an environment that allow people, or sometimes force people, to stretch themselves, to get out of their comfort zone, to do things that are not really, once again, comfortable doing with, in different territories, with experimenting with different expertises and skills. Because the leader of the future is an holistic leader. Is somebody that understands multiple dimensions of culture, technology, society, business. And so we need people, that stretch themselves. Sometimes you find leaders that naturally do it, is in their nature. And in that case, you just need to help them amplifying that even more or celebrating that approach. In other cases, there are leaders that are really, really good, but they don't have in them that willingness and desire to stretch themselves out of their comfort zone. In that case, you need to somehow help them doing it, eventually sometimes even force them doing it. And the most of the time when I force somebody to do something that, they were not comfortable with, moving, for instance, from brand design to the world of innovation, just making up an example, if, you had the right leader and if you are forcing them to do the right thing, they always thank me afterward. Stretching yourself is an amazing way to grow as a leader.
Now, Mauro, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build and design their own leadership brand?
Well, I think social media today are an incredible tool with an incredible potential to build your leadership and to build your personal brand that is not just useful to yourself, but is an unbelievable asset for the company you work for. For instance, if you are a company that hire an amazing marketing leader or a technical leader or design leader that has a strong personal brand and is able to attract to the company other amazing talents, well, that's a great asset for the leader, but also, and mostly in the case, for the company. So I think, first of all, it's very important for companies around the world to make sure that they empower the leaders to build those personal brands. Too many times, many companies are afraid that that leader is there just building his brand or her brand, and they don't see the unbelievable value that instead that personal brand can bring to the company. I feel very lucky that PepsiCo is a company with a very open-minded and is giving us as leaders in the organization the possibility to express ourselves and to share our point of views in our platforms. Now, to answer your question more directly, what I suggest, what would be my advice to people out there? Well, first of all, don't be shy. And don't be frugal with your social media platforms, and create content and push them out there. Do it in an authentic way. Don't just regurgitate content of others or what the company is telling you to say. For instance, if you are in LinkedIn, don't just keep posting things about, company announcements and launch of new products, but have a point of view. Have a point of view. Obviously, to do that, you need to understand inside out the brand of the company, the position of the company, and be respectful of that because you represent the company as well. And then you need to know inside out who you are. What's your point of view on the world? What's your purpose? What's your brand at the end of the day? What you stand for? And so you need then to combine the two. And it should be pretty natural because if you work in that company, I assume that your purpose is aligned to the purpose of the company. When that doesn't happen, then there is a high probability that you are totally unhappy. And so, if that doesn't happen, just get out of the company and go somewhere else and find a company that has the same purpose that you have or similar kind of values. So if instead you are in tune with the company, then it's very easy in your social media platforms to be authentic, have a point of view, and share also the point of view of the company, combine the two in unique and differentiated content. And therefore, you need to be somehow personal in the way, you do it, and also in the tonality, in the form of content. And this is something that I am doing. I'm not, in this specific case, giving advice to anybody and just sharing what I do, and it's been working very well for me. It doesn't mean that everybody should do the same, but in my case, what I do is I mix my personal life with my professional life. If you go on my LinkedIn profile, you will find contents that are very professional and other contents that are very personal, and they are totally mixed together. And LinkedIn is a professional platform. Somebody, sometimes are like, oh, wait a second, but that's a personal content, should be in Facebook. No, because as leaders in these companies, we are human beings. And, if I share something about love in LinkedIn, well, you know what? I think is relevant also for LinkedIn, because you need to practice, the idea of empathy and kindness and love and respect also in your professional journey, for instance. And the same, when you go to Instagram or Facebook, and I share both, obviously, all my personal life, but also my professional experiences. Even in the case, at the end of the day, my job is what I love to do, is part of myself, is what defines me in so many ways. And so I am proud, and I love to share also the dimension of me, even in the more private and personal platforms. So at the end of the day, I totally blend them together, but also because at the end of the day, what I do, for me, is my life. To be a designer, in my interpretation, is not a job. It's just a way of thinking, a way of behaving, a way of living.
Now, Mauro, what is your advice for future leaders? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
Well, we could talk for hours about this. I will take just one angle, one perspective on the topic. When, what defines you as a leader, the most of the time is you lead people, and you create something that didn't exist before. And when I say you lead people, it may mean also, it happens also when you don't have a team under you. You may lead people surrounding you. It could be even your boss, or it could be, you have your own startup, and it's really about inspiring the people, that will buy or will use your products and services. So is a people quality, and then is the ability to innovate, to do things differently, and to change and transform in a form or the other. So if that's the definition I want to focus on of leaders, any leader today and in the future will face a series of roadblocks. In the past years, I define these phases, these roadblocks, in 5 phases. The first one is the phase of denial. You leader, you will try to change something. It could be a company, it could be a community, it could be anything. And the people will be like, wow, we don't need it. We just don't need it. And this is typical, because people don't like to change, and often they're blind to something that eventually you, innovator, you leader, may see. In this specific phase, in the phase of denial, you need major resilience, and you need a major ability to stick to your dreams and not being demotivated by the day-to-day and by all the pushbacks. And usually is the most difficult phase, or is one of the most difficult phases, and is the phase where the most of the people fail. They give up, and they just align to what's happening in their community, in the world, in their company. The second phase, let's say that, okay, now you are starting to change something. You keep doing it, and eventually you have a sponsor. Maybe your CEO put you there and empower you to do things in a different way. There is an high probability you start to meet people that pretend they are with you, but they are not. Again, the example of a company, for instance, in my case, when I joined 3M many years ago, my previous company, the technology company based in Minnesota, I had the support of the top management. I would go to all these meetings. I thought I was getting a lot of traction, but in reality, a lot of people were there pretending that they were okay with what I was proposing, just because they knew I had a strong sponsor behind, but they were not really with me. I call this phase the phase of hidden rejection, when you are surrounded by people that either don't want to hurt you, or somehow they fear you for a reason or for the other. So they're not going to tell you in your face, no. And so it's the passive aggressive kind of behavior. And in this phase, for any leader of the world, it's key to have a very strong level of self-awareness. It's so easy when people say that you're great, that you're good, that your ideas are phenomenal, to believe them. In reality, you need to assess yourself. You need to understand really what drives these people. You need to really understand the situation, and you need to understand if they're really with you or they're not. At a certain point, you will start to find people that are with you. I call them the co-conspirators, people that are willing to take a bet with you. They're willing to take a leap of faith with you. I actually call this phase the occasional leap of faith. Is when you find somebody, a business leader or a tech leader, whatever it is, that decides to partner with you leader, and together helping each other transforming something, innovating something. At that point, you will start to create a series of what I call the proof points, a series of projects that go to market and are successful. And more people will start to ask you to be part of it. You will find more and more collaborators, co-conspirators, and partners. And you start to grow and grow and grow until the company is like, oh, wait a second. I mean, it's clear that this new leader is building value inside the organization, and this new culture, this new capability, this new function, whatever this leader created makes sense for the company. At that point, you want to scale it up. You want to integrate it inside the organization. You want to make sure that this leader, because we are talking about leadership, is integrated with his culture, or her culture within the organization. I call this phase the quest for confidence. And this, it's called in this way because it's a moment where you may have a very great idea, your capability is the right one, or your product is the right one, or your style of leadership is the right one, and everybody gets it. But then in the day-to-day, you face the big challenges of the integration. You start to face, so many roadblocks. And often that's where everything falls apart. And you need to find the right confidence as an organization to drive things in the right way. So confidence in leaders and the ability to integrate with empathy, to connect with others, to understand the framework and the culture of the existing organization and insert yours within to change everything from within is key. And finally, if you do all of that, you will arrive to what I call the holistic awareness, where everybody understands where we are, where we stand, that new capability is built, the new product is launched. Everybody is happy with that new culture that is integrated, embedded inside the DNA. At that point, the challenge for any leader is the one of nurturing the culture, nurturing the leadership, nurturing that approach, keep growing that, in that holistic awareness situation. And so one of the key traits of a leader in that phase is what I call the ability to inspire, the charisma, the ability to have a vision, to have a dream and share the dream with others with a storytelling kind of approach.
Now, Mauro, so much has changed this year due to COVID, and so has leadership. So if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
Well, there are a few, but for sure, one characteristic that nobody ever talks about is kindness, being a good human being, being a trustworthy, kind soul. Why is so important? Well, if we believe that we live in a society where we need to move fast, with an accelerated pace, with high efficiency, creating quality, then it's clear that you need to work with each other, different functions, different capabilities, different leaders. And there will be a lot of overlaps when you start to work with each other. And if you think about the specific characteristics, the ability, being a good person, being a kind person, being a trustworthy person, imagine, your situation, your community, your job. If you are surrounded by people that are good, you want to work with them. You call them, you want to spend time with them. You enjoy staying with them. But if you have, on your team or on the company, a jerk, somebody that is not good, somebody that is unkind, you don't want to be with them. You don't trust them. Therefore, you want proactively, reach out to them. You won't try to solve problems with them. You will try to defend yourself from them. And therefore, for instance, you will start to work on projects and solutions even if they're supposed to do that, even if they're working on those projects, on those solutions, you will work on those as well, because you want to be ready in case that person is going to stab you in the back, or is going to put his own interest or her own interest on top of the interest of the team, of the group, of the community, of the company. So kindness, that is a beautiful, humanistic, romantic concept and idea, they should be one of the key traits by definition, no matter what. And then unfortunately not often is, because you have, leaders that get promoted even if they're not nice people. Kindness should be a key trait for these promotions, for the leaders of the future of any kind of company, because on top of being ethically, what we should aim for, is also an amazing driver of productivity and efficiency. Having a team made of good people is a team that works better with each other, that is very agile, that is very synergetic. It's the team when there is not the redundancy of people doing additional work to protect themselves. There is not the inefficiency of people not connecting with each other in the best possible way. Another characteristics again, that people don't talk too much about is curiosity, and ability to make questions with humility, but also with confidence. So mixing the two, humbleness and confidence, is the ability to investigate different kind of fields and territories and learn, continue to learn all your life, being students for the rest of your life. The ability to talk different kind of languages, being a polyglot, being able to talk the language of marketing, the language of design, the language of manufacturing, of legal, of HR, understanding your people, your consumers, your customers. So but it's all driven, I'm mentioning multiple characteristics, but at the end of the day, it's all driven by that inner, insatiable, intrinsic curiosity that drives you to learn and connect with different kind of realities in so many different ways. And then finally, we also need people that are able to take risk in a smart way, but while eventually to innovate in the past was not extremely necessary in many situations, because you will build these, huge organizations with major scales to entry, barrier to entry, today, as we said earlier, you need to innovate, you need to change, you need to transform continuously yourself, your company, your brands, your products, your business model, your way of working. And that's why risk is something that you need to deal with every day. And so the ability to take risk and to manage risk in the proper way, I think is another very, very important characteristics. And finally, optimism, having the kind of optimistic way of looking at life that is totally connected to this ability of taking risk, and is totally connected then to the ability of innovate and transform and change.
Now, Mauro, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Well, I have a few. I'll mention one that comes top of mind is the story of this person. His name is Mauro Vella. Today is our head of design for all the Asia region, APAC, and for all the Middle East and Africa region, what we call AMISA. And in PepsiCo, in our company. I met Mauro many years ago, and I hired him in 3M as an intern in Milan. And then I sent him after 1 year or so to China, to work in China. And he grew up in China in that position. And then when I moved to PepsiCo, after 1 year I was in PepsiCo, I asked him to join me in PepsiCo. Why I'm mentioning Mauro? Well, because when I hired him, he was a very young talent, as you can imagine. He was out of university as an intern. I moved him to China. And I'll tell the PepsiCo part of the story. The story obviously is longer than this. But when I joined PepsiCo, he was pretty junior as a leader. So I asked him to join us in PepsiCo, but I told him, look, I'm going to hire somebody on top of you to run design for the region. He was perfectly fine. So he was a junior person. He came in, and he's unbelievable. The value was able to create very quickly, very rapidly in few months. And thanks, to him, he convinced the company to hire more designers right away in the region on top of his position. And so long story short, he got so much traction. He started to create so many unbelievable projects that will go to market that at a certain point, I decided to just give him the leadership position. It was somehow a courageous decision for me as well, because obviously I could have hired somebody with many more years of experience, but I just wanted to trust a more junior talent. And, my career at the end of the day got the same acceleration. I was the chief design officer of 3M at 35 years old. At 30, I was head of design for 3M globally. So obviously I appreciate and I'm more comfortable taking certain kind of risk because somebody took similar risk on me back then, and I saw that I could deliver. But it's not easy, obviously, and it's not that common that you find people with not many years of experience, but that insane talent to be able to drive something like this. So that's a beautiful story. And Jimmy's been always somebody that somehow took my mentorship and my directions at heart and embraced them and executed them in his own unique way, because we're all different and nobody's a copycat of anybody else, and Jimmy is a very different and differentiated kind of person in his style, in his way of working and everything. There was one moment, and then the second one very quickly is few years later, we have the possibility to grow design outside of China and build the entire region. We are about to open a design center in India, and then immediately after we're going to go for Thailand and then Egypt and finally South Africa. And back then I told Jim, well, probably we're going to hire somebody for the entire region. And again, he started to make a case for the value that he could create. He started to work out of China to support some of these regions that didn't have design centers yet. So long story short, he got in that position. I decided to give that major, very high level position in the organization to him. That was a few years ago. Today, we are in the process again. We opened already India, we opened Thailand. We're in the process of opening both Egypt and South Africa. And Jim is doing a phenomenal job. So it's a beautiful story. There is more people, Matteo Aquino, Vasily, Kassab in Moscow, many others, but we don't have time to mention all of them, but similar stories of great talents that were able to grow very rapidly inside the organization, embracing certain kind of learnings and some inspiration I was giving them, but then adding their own experience, their own personality, their own talent, their own skills, and creating, becoming amazing leaders by themselves.
Now, Mauro, looking back over your career and your leadership journey and maybe your learning journey, who are the kind of role models of leadership that you recommend future leaders should learn from?
When you talk about role models, you're talking about people or
Yes.
or leadership models?
Well, both. It can be both.
Well, in terms of leadership style and model, and this is a little bit of the synthesis of what I share until now with you and our listeners, is team-oriented leadership, and let's call it charismatic driven leadership. So it's a mix of having leaders that are visionary, big dreamers, and are able to storytell and share those dreams with charisma, bring people with them, combined with respect for others, putting people and teams at the center of everything, bringing people with you, empowering, enabling, and working against this idea of conflict that I never understood and we never will within organizations, and working instead on all the idea of collaboration. In terms of people, leaders, I met so many in my life, and many are anonymous, people that, if I mention them, the people listening to us won't know them. There are others that are more renowned and that we all observe from far away. And somehow, I may mention some of them: Richard Branson or Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, and we all read his story in the Shoe Dog, his biography. And if somebody didn't do it, I highly recommend the book. Steve Jobs, in some aspect of his leadership, because there are some that probably I don't appreciate and don't agree with. But look, just mentioning these three, there is one common trait of their leadership that I particularly love, and is the ability to think big, the ability to be unbelievable visionary, to have dreams, and to then execute those dreams in the world, in the market, creating really transformation, innovation in the society.
Now, Mauro, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
Well, LinkedIn for sure, and Instagram. I'm extremely active in Instagram. Every day there is new content. In LinkedIn, a little bit less, but still, pretty active. And the two contents are different and complementary, as you can imagine, but with some connections. And then also Facebook, where there is another dimension again. So 3 platforms with 3 different kind of dimensions. The only thing I want to make sure people know, on Facebook, I max the people that can connect with me, the 5,000. So you can just follow. Unfortunately, this is not a rule I put.
Right.
And it's a rule that I don't particularly like. LinkedIn, the same. I max the 30,000 people, so you can just follow me. And I'm really sorry, because I would love to connect with everybody, but it's not a rule that I hope LinkedIn will change the rule. And then finally, there is our podcast, In Your Shoes, and that you can find. So In Your Shoes with Mauro Porcini, you can find in Apple Podcast, in Spotify, or on our or in YouTube. And then soon my book as well, next year.
And the title of your book, can you share that with us?
We didn't decide yet, so we are finalizing both the content. We're almost done, but we didn't decide the title. I have obviously something in mind, but let's see where we go.
Right. All right. And now, last but not least, Mauro, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own personal leadership?
Well, I think there is one key word, and it's people. Putting people before anything else. So is you as leaders, your emotions, your vision, your dreams, your intuition, your personal branding, mix everything together and be as authentic and transparent as possible, because at the end of the day, that's what people go for. And so that's you. And then is the people we design for have an approach that is really focused on people and human beings. And when I say design, I mean the broader meaning of the word. So essentially anything we do, no matter your job, is about designing something, creating something, transforming something, innovating something. So put the human being, their needs, wants, dreams, and aspiration before anything else. And I synthesize this philosophy of life with these 3 words, or actually 4: people in love with people. Actually 5. And this could be actually one of the titles of my coming book as well.
Well, Mauro, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and reminding us that it's all about people, and kindness and charisma and inspiration are key to the future of leadership.
I totally agree. Yes, it is all about that.